All right, everyone good? All right, welcome everyone. We're gonna call to order the Narragansett Town Council work session, interviews for the candidates for the planning board. It is 6 o'clock on a Monday, and we do not do the Pledge of Allegiance because it's just a work session. So welcome. So we have two candidates to interview tonight, two who I believe came out and spoke with us a few months back when we, maybe it was 6 months back when we interviewed for the last open seat. And we are going to go alphabetically by last name. So why don't we go ahead and get started with Jerry Brunetto. Jerry, welcome. Welcome back.
Hello.
So we have time. We thought we'd have more candidates, so we have plenty of time. So go ahead and take your time. Council members, ask as many questions as you like. And Jerry, if you don't mind, I know you did this last time, but if you don't mind just doing another quick intro with a little bit on your background.
I live at 82 Kingstown. Lived there full-time since 2016 and bought the house in 2003. My wife and I and the kids bought our first home in Metuxet in 73. I left, offered a partnership in New Jersey and left, but I'm back to stay. Love the town. I've served on the Land Trust, of course, as you know, for 4 years, almost 5 years now.
Great, thank you, Jerry. Why don't we go ahead and we'll go around, ask some questions. We will start with Susan.
Hi, Jerry.
Hi, Susan.
So in your application, you had mentioned how you care about the community and you work towards, protecting it. And I think, work on the land trust certainly displays that kind of philosophy. But can you share with us the philosophy that you bring on the planning? Liberal, more conservative? What do you think about planning and developing? That kind of stuff.
I'm certainly for the organized and responsible development of the town. Not too fast, not too slow. I consider myself a moderate, and I consider myself open-minded. But I also like the rule of law. So there you have it. I hope that helps.
Thank you, it does.
All right, is that it for you?
That's it for
Okay, Eva?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for, so I was just wondering what your thoughts were on just the Galilee parcel and any plans that you think would be good for that area.
I went to the initial meetings when it was at GAT, what's the acronym for it, was started a couple of years ago now. And coincidentally, my wife and I just got back from Block Island this afternoon and parked not 30 feet from the old hotel. And when I came back, boy, what a mess. But I think that building needs to come down. Something needs to be done with it. I'm for the development of that space. I think mixed use there would make sense. I certainly don't think it should be a parking lot. And I certainly think something should be done very soon, because it's been a blight for, I don't know, you can't even tell you how long it's been closed. 20 years has it been? Since it's been open, taking guests, maybe longer. So I'm glad to see that the town and you are taking initiative and trying to do something about it. I follow it in the newspapers, but that's as far as I've been involved.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Eva. Deb?
Not good at microphones either. Hi, Jerry, how are
Hi.
you? I wanted to just ask a couple of questions. First of all, I was wondering whether you've had an opportunity to get to understand the bulk zoning ordinances that we created in the past few months, year?
I followed them somewhat. I know that there's been discussion on the floor area ratio. And I know what I read in the papers, but I haven't taken an active role in it. That's part of controlled development.
Yep.
And I was particularly concerned with counting of basement space. And I had shared with Terry, who's on the land trust with me, that in the town I lived in, they went from 10 feet to 8 feet, and they had to go to 6 feet in the basement to prevent people from using it as bedrooms. They lowered it to 8 feet, and they still were able to get drop ceilings in there and overuse the space. So.
So are you, I had one other question about your familiarity with the comprehensive plan.
Yes, and I look forward to being a part of the one coming up. I know it's 3-4 years away.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Deb. All right, I'm going to ask you, start with a simple one. Would you be available on Tuesday evenings to attend the planning board meetings?
That is a
if
good,
you were?
we're probably going to do that. yeah.
Just want to make sure, get this out of the way, because we've had some issues.
Yes.
Okay, Tuesday nights are not an issue for you?
No.
Okay, great. So I know that you've had a commitment to the land trust, and you've showed up to those meetings, I believe, for the most part. I'm never there, so I can't even tell, but I'm pretty sure that you've been making the meetings.
I've only missed a couple in the
Right.
past 4 years, really.
Right. So what have you, how's that experience been for you being on the land trust? I mean, have you enjoyed it? Is it interesting?
I had a lot of fun doing it. I really enjoyed working with Tom, developing the trails. But at the same time, it's been a little frustrating because we don't really have any authority. But I loved it, and we continue to do that, be involved going forward if I'm not appointed here this evening.
Okay, great. What are some of the, so there have been a lot of higher profile, I think, ordinances that have gone through the planning board and then come to the council as recommendations over the last 3 or 4 years. Some of those started with the last council and continued through to this council just because of timing and that sort of thing. And, if you're on the council or if you're on the planning or zoning board, you're pretty aware of these and what the intention is in terms of shaping the kind of the demographics and housing and that sort of thing in the community. What do you, in your mind, kind of think of when you think the upcoming issues are that the planning board is going to be dealing with, both on their, from community development, but also directed from the council? What sort of issues do you think are upcoming?
The most apparent, I think, is the rapid development of any buildable lot in the town. I don't follow the zoning ordinances probably as much as I should, but I have paid attention. I was particularly pleased that we were able to lower the building height. I noticed along Narrow River they had those 3-story homes. So I was happy to see that something was done about that. And I am familiar with this last, FAR problem.
ratio, gotcha.
Yeah, I'm aware of the situation. I can be better informed on the zoning ordinances, and I certainly will if I'm appointed. I know general knowledge, R10s, R80s.
Yeah, okay.
From trying to purchase and get easements for the land trust, so we can have access. Community development, I don't know. There's been a lot of talk of moving some of the facilities from one place to another. I know the fire department, the use of Clark Road, Avis, I think it's Avis, where the town is. Westmoreland, moving the DPW over there. I think there's a lot that can be done and will be done over the next several years. And I think after the development of the library, we're going to have to deal with the existing library. I haven't heard any discussion on that as yet, but I'm certainly interested.
Okay, great,
Okay.
great. All right, yeah, I think that's it for me.
How do we
So-
do?
I just want to ask a
Yeah.
question on affordable housing. Can you kind of give us your philosophy on, I know that you've visited the affordable housing, but, you
Yes.
know, here's, you know, what's making it difficult, what would you do if you had a little more control or participation?
I think we need more consensus in the town and more willingness to accept affordable housing. It's sorely needed. I think things will be done. As I recommended at your meeting, I think mixed use on some of the property on the north end in particular would be of great help. I think it's gives you an affordable place to live and yet brings in business because it offsets costs. I do have considerable experience in expansion of shopping centers, commercial properties from the business I had and managed for over 40 years. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to add one more. We
Go
have
ahead.
so much time that I just want to,
Oh,
just trying to
lucky.
fill the space
Yeah,
here, you
there
know?
Lucky
What's your
me.
favorite color?
Yeah.
Just kidding. No, as a business owner and operator, you had businesses in New Jersey and
Yes.
and in Rhode Island, right?
Yes.
Are there any like obvious things that you feel like could be improved to help businesses in Narragansett? Just from not even things that you've really thought fully through, but just kind of like, oh, you know, this environment isn't great maybe for this reason, and we could do this or that. Anything that comes to mind?
No, I think something should be done with the plaza, with Salt Pond Plaza. I think something should be done there. It's been vacant, I think, pretty much since it's been built. And I had made a recommendation that maybe something could be done in that regard, on that property, in the rear of the property, perhaps a second story for living space. I pointed out that the view from the second story, you could probably see Salt Pond. So I think you have to kind of think outside of the box if we're going to get ahead of this affordable housing problem.
Great. All right, thank you.
I'm
welcome.
going to ask one more follow-up to that. Would you be in favor of a town-wide mixed-use ordinance?
It's certainly not townwide, but in specific areas in town, I don't think I would want the town to expand in areas that, or change existing zones. But I like this idea, and I'm going to learn more about creating an overlay district to allow, again, those mixed use. I see particular use for commercial in the north end. I see a want and a need there for more facilities, more restaurants, more shopping. And I think that's going to happen regardless. There's property for sale across the street. You know, there used to be a golf driving range there where I don't know if it's where CDS was. Do you remember the golf range? Yeah,
Oh,
you
yeah,
do?
yeah. Tommy Spargo's place, right?
Yeah, it's, so yes. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
All right.
thank
right.
you.
Anything else? All right, any last thoughts for us? Are you good?
I would do a good job for the town. I would give it my best effort, and I hope you consider me for the position.
All right, thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, great. So next we have Thomas Callahan. Good evening, Tom.
Good evening, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Very well, thanks.
Great. So you were out here a while back with Jerry as well,
Yes.
when we did our last round, and you also were here for the zoning board interviews. Do you mind just kind of refreshing our memories and giving a little background info?
Sure, born and raised until finishing the University of Rhode Island here in Rhode Island. Moved to Washington, D.C., and spent 3 years working with Congress on the Senate side. Moved out to St. Louis, started a family there, lived there for 8 years. Ran a small nonprofit, worked for the AFL-CIO doing political organizing and lobbying for them. Came back to northeastern Connecticut, kind of halfway between where I was working in Aetna Life and Casualty and where our families were here in Rhode Island. Spent 33 years in Connecticut, working at Aetna, and then on to the University of Connecticut in several senior administrative roles there. My wife and I bought a house here in Narragansett in 2011. I moved here permanently in 2016 when I went to work for the state of Rhode Island briefly, and renovated the house, and we've been living here ever since. I live on Baltimore Avenue, and that's it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So we'll go ahead and go around. And just a reminder for everyone, we did appoint Mr. Gallahan as the alternate to the zoning board. So he's currently sitting on the zoning board.
So that's my first question, Tom. So you're an alternate on the zoning board. So I
Correct.
guess I'm wondering, first of all, for that particular position that you're going to, I thought you would probably move up on the zoning. Why planning as opposed to zoning? Why are you here
You know,
tonight?
I think it's an interesting question if you look at the two boards. The zoning board has more authority in the realm that it operates in, but the realm that it operates in is a relatively narrow realm, and that's essentially looking at the issues of whether or not to overrule a building official's call on something that's been done with regard to a building project, or whether or not to grant a variance. The planning board has less authority. It recommends to the zoning board on those issues, with the exception of the zoning official. I don't think the planning board gets involved in that. But it does have a role in terms of recommending on the variance, and the planning board can take that into account, or it can ignore it. But the planning board has a much broader role in terms of renewing on a regular basis the town's comprehensive plan, which is really the roadmap for development and conservation here in town. It also has a broader role in terms of advising the council on any one of a number of issues that the council refers to it and asks for its opinion on the way through. So, from my vantage point, that's a role that's well suited to my background. I have a pretty diverse background in terms of work experiences and volunteer experiences, and it's better aligned with my interests. Not that I'm not enjoying myself on the zoning board, and there's no assurance that an alternate will be moved up on the zoning board, as you know. So when the opportunity came back to interview for this, I decided to do that.
I like that answer. Thanks. I just had a couple of follow-up questions. Same question as far as your philosophy on development and planning. Conservative, liberal, interested in development, really don't want any more, just kind of want to know what your philosophy, what your beliefs, core beliefs are for the town of Narragansett.
In one word, it's balance. I've had a fair amount of experience in both development and conservation. I was essentially representing the University of Connecticut as it moved through about a $4 billion development program across the state of Connecticut over 20 years, both on the main campus in Storrs and at its regional campuses in Stamford and Hartford, and Avery Point as well. In that role, I frequently was in front of the Mansfield Planning and Zoning Board and the Mansfield Town Council as the university's point person on projects on campus, as well as a couple of joint projects that we did with the town, including a $160 million mixed-use development right off the university's campus, which had about 120,000 square feet of retail and about 600 units of student-related housing there. So I've got that experience. I've also, while I was in St. Louis, ran a neighborhood association that represented 60 city blocks, about 12,000 residents, and in a neighborhood that was a transition neighborhood undergoing redevelopment there. And so the role there was a little different. It was essentially to work with the city to try to get additional resources, to work with landlords to try to get them to pay attention to both their tenant management and their property management responsibilities. So I have that perspective that I bring to this. And then finally, while at UConn, I worked with the town of Mansfield to cause about 350 acres of university land to be put into permanent conservation. I was also the vice chairman of a nonprofit conservation development organization called the Norcross Wildlife Foundation that had about 5,000 acres of land up in north central Connecticut and Massachusetts.
I just wanted to ask your experience or your knowledge or interest on affordable housing in the town.
I've got a little. It's not as recent as it might otherwise be, but while I was at Aetna, my portfolio is I was at the Aetna Foundation and the Aetna Department of Corporate Social Responsibility. My portfolio was to do the city of Hartford and the surrounding communities and to manage a national socially responsible investment program with a portfolio of about $50 million, which was set aside by the company to finance affordable housing in neighborhoods both in Hartford and across the country, to do some capacity building with small nonprofit organizations in cities across the country, and to do some commercial development for minority-owned businesses. So I've got that perspective. It's a financing perspective, and as I said, I led a neighborhood organization for which the redevelopment of housing and the infill housing was a very important strategy for stabilizing the neighborhood as we move forward. So I've got those, I've got that experience in my background. As far as Narragansett's concerned, its problems are a little different. I will tell you this, I'm not sure how much outreach has been done. There may have been a great deal, I'm just not aware of it, to the development community here in Narragansett. I was speaking to somebody who is a fairly significant real estate person here in town, both from the point of view of property rentals and some development. And we were talking about the issues that were related to the Clock Road project that I was involved in, which, in my judgment, fell short on providing any affordable housing because it was below the threshold, the six lot threshold that would have caused it to be required. And that developer said to me, you know, affordable housing, that horse has left the barn. That was the exact, that horse has left the barn. It's never going to happen. Been my experience that if you begin to reach out and draw those people in and begin to talk to them about what ideas they might have, you may be able to build a more collaborative relationship and begin to see a shared vision in terms of how do you get from point A to point B. That's the only observation. You know, there's not a lot of land here that's left to be available. I've done a little work over the course of the fall with over the course of the spring with an organization based in Providence called Building Futures Rhode Island. It's an organization that works with people of color and people not of means in terms of beginning to get them through a pre-apprenticeship program and begin to funnel them into the trades. But they also have, as part of training those individuals, they have begun to do small house projects on individual lots in places like Central Falls and Providence. Clearly, the communities there are different in terms of their experience with that, but there's, you know, the council will consider tonight conveying some land that is a vacated street to somebody to do something, much like it did with St. Veronica's a little while ago. And I've been getting to think, because I've got such a lot literally right next door to my house. I've got a paper street that's never been developed, whether or not those might provide opportunities for so-called small house development as we go forward. So just some thoughts. I mean, they're not really well refined just yet, but some thinking about doing it. You're welcome.
Sorry, all right, thanks, Susan. Let's go over to Eva.
Hi, thank you for coming back.
Oh, thank you for having me
Yep.
back.
Same question as before, just your thoughts on Galilee and just from a planning perspective.
You know, Galilee is interesting, and I'm going to answer it a little differently this time through than I did last time through, because I've had a chance to think about it a little bit more. When I was with the University of Connecticut, we had a very adversarial relationship with the town of Mansfield when I got there in 1995. The cause of that was manifold. The university had an old abandoned landfill and had a chemical waste disposal facility on its campus that had not been taken care of. I mean, it had been used since the 1940s, had not been taken care of. There was a leak from the system. It began to infiltrate people's wells. That turned a good part of the community against us. The university did not do a good job addressing it. The university tried to build a technology park over the objections of the town, so the town had no authority with respect. The state gave broad authority to the university as a state entity in terms of its sovereign immunity. And so the town had very little regulatory authority over that, but there were people in town who were very effective community organizers that blocked the university from moving forward. The university tried to build a football stadium on campus, unsuccessful. Our football stadium now is in East Hartford, Connecticut. I said to the folks inside the university when it came time to try to do a town center, which I mentioned a little while ago, we have demonstrated our inability to do this on our own. We just can't do it on our own. We've got to figure out a way to work with the town to get this thing done. And so as I've thought about Galilee, and I thought about the state, and I've watched the back and forth between the governor and the head of DEP and the rest of it, I've again wondered whether or not there was a way to have a meeting of the minds. And I'm sure Jim and others, yourself and others have been trying to work that through. But so long as the town is strong and is firm, so long as the town is firm in saying, look, we are going to have a voice in this, and makes that so, you will. If you don't, you won't. So my first thing would be, we've got to continue to be firm on that issue. With respect to mixed-use development, does it make sense in Galilee? I think it does. Does it make sense to split the three parcels up between the state and the town? I don't know. As I mentioned to you, I think separately in email, there are people in the development community that do very specific, unique, boutique kinds of development, mixed-use development over there. I think you had an opportunity to explore that. Whether you got any responses to it or not, I'm not sure. But there are people who you could invite in to come in and give you some advice in terms of how to get that, how you might be able to move that along. Yeah, I mean, it's so long as the state's saying, look, from a state's economic development priority point of view, what we see is something related to the fishing, kind of the fishing aspects of Galilee. And the town is saying, yeah, but we think there's a need to physically improve that property in a way that will provide a set of mixed-use retail services there in town. There's got to be a meeting of the mind. Until that happens, you'll be at loggerheads. Okay.
All right, thank you, Eva. Deb?
Good evening, Tom. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm very well,
Good.
thank you. I want to take a minute to thank you for something, because in one of the times that you were here before, you'd mentioned the program, the plan that you worked out at UConn with the town in
Yep.
terms of creating both business space and housing for students. And I was at a meeting a couple weeks ago. President Parlange invited us, actually, when he was here, to attend this particular meeting, where he had a series of them talking to various and sundry interested parties. And this was the group that was part of residential, areas around the university. And we were talking about housing, we were talking about student housing. And I actually used your example because I
good.
remembered it as something that we should consider. Not sure where that's going to go, but I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to use it.
Well, I'll just two things on that, if I could.
Sure.
One is, we put together, because of the animosity that existed between the town and the university on development-related issues, we organized a 501c3 nonprofit organization to lead the development there that was equally balanced between university representation, business community representation, and representation from town and its residents. That organization just celebrated its 20th anniversary. Last week I was there for that. The development project is completed, but because the development project is completed doesn't mean the problems go away.
Of course not.
You got to continue to manage both the property and the tenancy as you go forward. The second thing I'll say is one of the key issues to that development project, and it relates specifically to the town of Narragansett in the following way. The university controlled the water and sewer system in stores. And so the town had a set of, their municipal buildings, the high school that's right in downtown, and some residential homes were connected to the university's water and sewer system. But areas that really needed development, which were just outside of the core downtown, it's called the Four Corners, where the intersection of 44 and 195 are on the north end of town, did not have water and sewer. The university had to figure out a way, and the university's water supply was vulnerable because it was tied to groundwater aquifers that in the summertime, when the river flows had the ability to draw inducted infiltration. It was a problem. So we had to get a interbasin transfer permit, and then we worked a deal with the town to expand both our water supply, their water supply, and then connect the town to our sewer system. Those things were critical to that project and also to the university's economic development
Well, one
issues
of
going
the
forward.
key issues that we have is that, in fact, the university is in South Kingstown, not in Narragansett, and any nearby property development in any form would be a South Kingstown issue, not a Narragansett issue.
Correct.
So it's a concept that's in very, very early stages. I would like to just go back to the same questions that I asked Jerry. The first one is, how knowledgeable are you about our comprehensive plan, and what are your thoughts about it?
I've spent a good deal of time with the comprehensive plan. I spent a lot of time with parts of it, less time with
That's what I do too.
other parts of it. But it's a good comprehensive plan. I mean, when I compare a good comprehensive plan, I'm considering it and comparing it against Mansfield, Connecticut's, and they had a great comprehensive plan, and yours is as well.
Okay.
Mike and his team do a good job on those things. Does that answer your question, Deb?
Yeah. And then my other question is, are you familiar with the whole bulk zoning ordinance program that we
Yes,
developed?
although nothing's come before zoning just yet. There's been a
Right.
potential issue that was to come before zoning. It's been deferred for now at least, because they came here to look for an opportunity for a public hearing first.
Right.
So I have no direct experience with kind of the governance issues, but I am familiar with the ordinance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Deb. All right, Tom, good to see you.
Yes, good to see you too.
Let's see. So you have the experience at UConn and Mansfield, and to me it seems like, I hope I didn't ask this last time, but I can't remember. It seems like there's some overlap between that town, the college, some of the issues that existed, and then what we have in Narragansett. And they're different towns. We're coastal. There's some obvious differences in terms of tourism and that sort of thing. But do you think there were similarities between that situation and your job there and kind of some of the solutions and what Narragansett is currently seeing itself in?
Yes, I think two things come to mind right away. One is the issue of student housing and its impact on what had been stable residential areas that had become less stable and in some cases fully destabilized over the period of 15 or 20 years. And so we had two large apartment complexes that were not run by the university on the north side of the university that had landlords who were not particularly attentive to managing their properties or managing their tenants. That led to, there was a spine road called Hunting Lodge Road there, which had been lined with faculty and staff-owned housing there. That became destabilized over the 20 years that I was there. Those houses were all sold, and the vast majority of them turned out to be investment houses for student housing there. We had some of that begin to take place in the southern part of town. So obviously, what happens is neighbors get organized, and they begin to bring it to the attention of the elected officials, and you have to, and then they engage with the university. The university has a response, whether they're located here in Narragansett or they're located in Kingston. The university has a responsibility for ameliorating, if not doing something to improve the situation here in Narragansett if their students are having an impact on the market and on the quality of the neighborhoods. In my judgment, that was something I accepted at the university. That was something I was responsible for at the university. I led the Town Gown Relations Committee at the university for 14 years, and it was a key issue all the way through. So that's one issue that I saw. And so they had a 3-student, they had a 4-student. They had the rental registration, they had the annual inspections. They had those things going on. The second thing is how does it? The town of Mansfield was always interested in trying to figure out how to leverage the university's presence to bring greater economic development to the town of Mansfield. Same is true here. You have a significant node of the University of Rhode Island here in Narragansett up at the Bay campus. It's a very significant research organization. And I'm not sure what level I'm 100% sure there have been conversations that have been done. I'm not familiar with what they are. But that's a place where people should be looking in terms of being able to work with the University of Rhode Island to do something up there. I know they're going to have they want to have a big bond issue to kind of renovate the campus up there. It's probably something that needs to get done. It's something that would be great to get done if they were thinking about. One of the things that we did at UConn, maybe it works in a situation like that, is some space up there gets dedicated for the commercialization of research so that there's an opportunity to take some of the lab work, commercialize it, and essentially get it out in the marketplace.
Okay, great. So the same question that I asked Mr. Brunetto earlier is, what do you foresee as the upcoming issues that will be coming through planning and for recommendations and possible drafting of ordinances?
Well, I think the comp plan, if this was a 5-year appointment, the comp plan would, I assume, would have to be done during that period of time. I think you've passed bulk zoning, you've passed the 3 to 4. You got the library situation moving. You've got Galilee, of course. You've got kind of the beach and the right-of-way access issues that are out there. This council's moved pretty quickly along those paths. The question is, what the planning and zoning things we'll be looking at is, for example, on bulk zoning, how does it really work? How is it really working on boots on the ground? Does it need to be tweaked? If so, how? So I think, at least on the initial get-go, the work that you have already done needs to be consolidated and make sure that it's working the way you designed it to work, with the objectives that you wanted it to work with.
Right. Okay, great. And so two things that are going to be, that will also, if you're appointed, that you'll hear at planning, will be parking. So that's something that we directed the staff to work with the planning board on. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is going to be a short-term rental ordinance
Right.
at some point. And, a lot of this it all kind of ties together. Are there cases that you're currently sitting on for zoning that you would need to either wrap up or just, I guess you would remove yourself from?
There are issues, there are a couple of issues that are coming forward that are scheduled for the next meeting, if I'm not mistaken, Mike. Couple of cases that I've sat on that have been continued to the next meeting. I believe I'll be clear at that point in time.
Okay. Okay, and let me see if there's anything else. I think that's it, yeah. Well, yeah, and your schedule's pretty free these days to be able to.
Tuesday nights?
Yes,
Yes.
okay, great. All right, yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Any last thoughts you want to share?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to be back. I hope you do understand the kind of the thought process that I went through in terms of zoning versus planning. And I hope I've addressed clearly the issues and the questions that you've had. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Sean.
All right, great. So that should do it. So we'll wrap this up. Oh, actually, there is one more question, Susan. So we had, sorry, Tom, we're good. Just a question for the council. We had submitted additional names to the town clerk. And we initially had like 4 or 5 people that were going to come for interviews, and there were some conflicts with scheduling and some other things. Before we close this or end this, I just want to check with the council. We don't have to do it, it's just an option. If we wanted to interview any additional people, just to get more than 2, we would continue this and go ahead and do that at a future date. If we think this is fine, the people that came, then we'll just end this and move ahead.
So are you saying that there's more applicants then?
There are more applicants, and we just kind of ran into some issues with scheduling, and also a couple people backed out. Are we satisfied with just interviewing 2 and going ahead, or is there any desire to try to continue this and bring a few more people in? Just, it's up to the council.
Question for you, Jesse. So were the individuals who were scheduled to interview, did they want another opportunity? Did they want the opportunity to interview, or were they?
So there was a couple applicants actually decided to pull out and not interview. They decided because they had second thoughts or they had scheduling issues, not for this, but ongoing scheduling issues. There was one applicant for sure that's on vacation that would be, I believe, available to come in a later date. And then also there were other applicants that we didn't submit because we were just trying to keep the numbers reasonable. If we wanted to, we could submit them and get a few more people in. And I'm not saying that we should or shouldn't do it, it's just, I'm bringing up the option.
I'm satisfied with the interview.
Everyone satisfied?
Yes.
Okay, okay, great. All right, cool. So thanks again. We will adjourn and thanks again, and we'll see the public at 7:30 for our regular meeting.